My brother took over the family business and pushed us out. I was left with nothing, starting over with just $500. A year later, I had a stall at his restaurant. Ethan had taken our father's restaurant and forbade the family from dining there. He blocked the entrance, arms crossed, saying, "This is a business, not a charity. You chose art over culinary school." I held my 7-year-old son Jake's hand and watched through the glass as my sister Sophia handled the cash. Cousins worked in the kitchen, and my nephew cleared tables. For 3 years, I folded clothes at a laundromat across the plaza, watching every shift, every smell, every rush, my family's restaurant thriving without me. Jake would ask, "Dad, why can't we eat at Uncle's? It smells so good." Children cannot grasp the harsh truths. How Ethan convinced our father I wasn't serious. How he rewrote the will while I sat at Dad's bedside. How the restaurant we should have shared became entirely his. 4 months ago, Jake and I met Mr. Hernandez, a vegetable supplier to Dad's restaurant. He whispered, "Your empanadas were always better than your brother's," glancing around. I had retired, but my nephew ran a food truck commissary. "There's a spot open if you're interested," he said. Bitter laughter. "With what money?" "I earn $12 an hour." He looked at me steadily. "Your father helped me start my business 20 years ago. No deposit, just a handshake. I'll offer you the same. Pay me when you can." Jake tugged my sleeve. "Dad, make those cheese things Grandpa taught you." That night, I found Dad's old recipe notebook in a box Ethan had given me. His handwriting hit me hard, but between the pages were the secrets he had taught me during our early morning prep sessions before Ethan arrived. The following week, I signed the lease for the commissary, a prep kitchen, and parking spot. I bought an old food cart for $900 using my tax refund. Jake helped paint it bright yellow. "Like sunshine," he said. We started with breakfast burritos and coffee 3 blocks from Ethan's restaurant. Workers remembered me from Dad's days. "These taste like Marcos," one said after the first bite. "Better, actually." Word spread quickly. By week 2, nurses from the medical center were ordering. Week 3, office workers called in. By month 2, I was prepping at 3 a.m. to meet demand. Jake did homework in the corner and occasionally handed customers change. Then opportunities grew. Mr. Martinez, owner of the auto shop, offered his parking lot for lunch. "Your brother charges $18 for what you sell for $8. Yours tastes like your father's before Ethan cut corners," he remarked. Comparisons reassured us. Soon, we had regular locations across the neighborhood. Morning at the construction site, lunch at the car shop, afternoons at the community college. My yellow cart became familiar, and Ethan's lunch crowd thinned. Sophia stopped by my cart one Thursday evening. "Ethan wants to communicate without looking at me," she said. "He says you're being unfair competing like this." I watched my 15 clients, regulars who had become more than customers. Mr. Hernandez's nephew, Jake's teachers, the vet clinic staff. Sophia got her usual order from Jake. "Extra salsa verde, no cilantro." I murmured, "Tell Ethan he may buy dinner." She hesitated. I returned to the grill. She left silently. The following Sunday, Ethan appeared beside his luxury SUV adorned with Dad's insignia. "We need to discuss boundaries," he said. He accused me of confusing customers. I stayed calm. The customers know what they're buying. They choose meals that taste like Dad's before he cut corners. His face reddened. He tried to assert dominance, claiming I disrespected Dad by criticizing his restaurant. Showing his phone, he pointed out my line of waiting customers, 15 deep, and asked when Ethan's restaurant last had that. I watched his jaw tighten. His approach shifted. He offered $2,500 per month to close my cart and work in his kitchen. Offensive. I declined immediately. I refused to sell Dad's recipes to someone diluting them with pre-made tortillas and shortcuts. Ethan went pale, surprised I knew about the alterations. He then lowered his voice, suggesting city interference with my permits and parking through connections. I remained calm, confirming my permits were valid, and Martinez supported me, though my heart raced, knowing of his political ties. After a long stare, he left in silence. I returned to my cart, hands trembling slightly as I served customers. Jake, noticing, asked if Uncle Ethan was cruel again. I explained grown-ups sometimes dispute over business, and reassured him we weren't losing customers. We didn't push anyone. At 8:30, I packed up and returned to the commissary. That night, I reviewed every business record: permits, licenses, health inspections, insurance, parking agreements. I organized and backed up everything, ready for any move Ethan might make. Monday morning, I arrived at the construction site at 6 a.m. for breakfast service. By 8:15, a city health inspector approached, citing a complaint. She inspected thoroughly: temperatures, hand washing, refrigeration, permits, food handler certification, even tasting salsa. Construction workers grew restless, but Carlos, the foreman, reassured them. After nearly an hour, she confirmed everything was perfect and documented the inspection as a malicious complaint, advising to keep records in case of further harassment. Within 24 hours, Ethan made his first strategic move. While cleaning the prep station, I called Mr. Hernandez. He calmly explained Ethan had tried to investigate my permits and rental agreement through his nephew. I realized my brother was trying to harm my business. I thanked him and stored the information. Later, Sophia approached my cart at the auto shop. She admitted Ethan planned to report me for insurance issues, though she knew I was fully covered. She then revealed discrepancies she had observed in Ethan's management: skimming money, overpaying himself, underpaying staff, cutting ingredients, and that his partner, David Torres, was unaware. Sophia showed me photographs of expense reports and invoices with anomalies. 3 days later, I met a downtown lawyer, Mr. Hernandez recommended. She reviewed all documentation: permits, licenses, inspection reports, insurance, parking agreements, and confirmed everything was legal and well documented. She advised keeping detailed logs of every interaction, threat, and harassment attempt in case legal action or a restraining order became necessary. She offered representation if needed and emphasized immediate communication if Ethan did anything threatening. Ethan's attempts to intimidate were escalating, but I was prepared. Every precaution was taken, every record secured, and my cart kept serving the community with the flavors of Dad's original recipes intact. The SUV was already parked in my usual spot when I arrived at the work site at 6 a.m. Ethan sat in the driver's seat, with his arms crossed, staring straight ahead, as if his only goal was to prevent me from setting up for breakfast. Construction workers arrived shortly after, clustering around and checking their watches, visibly frustrated as they anticipated breakfast burritos and coffee before work. I felt my temper rise, but reminded myself of the lawyer's advice: document everything and avoid giving Ethan any leverage. I drove my cart about 25 feet away from the side office and quietly set up my grill and prep station, rather than leaving or complaining. The workers noticed me and immediately lined up at the new location. Carlos, the foreman I had known for months, approached Ethan's SUV and knocked on the window. I couldn't understand all of what he said, but he pointed firmly at Ethan's car and then at a clearly defined spot behind it. Ethan argued and turned red with anger, but Carlos remained firm, nodding and pointing. When Carlos pulled out his phone, Ethan started his engine and sped out of the parking lot with screeching tires. The workers applauded, and Carlos grinned as he walked to my cart, explaining that Ethan had blocked a vehicle entry point. Had he not moved, Carlos would have called a tow truck. The crew laughed at Ethan's failed attempt to interfere with my business, which only strengthened their loyalty toward me. Later, while I served breakfast, Carlos clarified the situation. Ethan arrived 25 minutes before me, handing out restaurant discount coupons to staff as they arrived, he said. But the team preferred your food and didn't trust Ethan after seeing how he tried to block your cart. His voice grew serious. Ethan seemed desperate, almost frantic, pushing coupons and claiming his restaurant was better. I was worried because desperate people act unpredictably. I didn't know what he might do next if his tactics failed. I thanked Carlos for both the clarification and for moving Ethan, then focused on cooking, though my thoughts drifted to what my brother might try if intimidation and obstruction failed. That evening, Jake waited at the front office with his backpack and a plastic container when I picked him up from school. He told me Aunt Sophia had brought handmade empanadas for lunch, following Grandpa's recipe. Tommy's voice dropped as he added, "Sophia seemed upset and apologized for everything, wishing the family were different." I recognized her conflict, Ethan's manipulation and lies versus her conscience telling her what happened to me was wrong. It hurt my heart. Tommy asked if Sophia was okay and if our family might be whole again someday. I swallowed hard and said I hoped so, though it was complicated and grown-ups often make mistakes that take time to fix. After Jake went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone, reflecting on Sophia and David's story, still unaware of the full truth. Before I could stop myself, I called the restaurant, my heart racing. A professional and polite woman answered, and I asked to speak with David Torres about a business matter. Rebecca, David's wife, explained she handled finances and could discuss whatever I needed. I hesitated briefly, then told her I had information about how Ethan was actually running the restaurant. There was a pause. Rebecca asked if we could meet the next afternoon at a coffee shop near the restaurant to speak privately. I arrived 15 minutes early, reviewing them one last time to ensure clarity. Rebecca arrived promptly, a tall, professional-looking woman carrying an expensive leather bag. She greeted me with a firm handshake. I probably spoke too fast, explaining how Ethan had replaced fresh tomatoes with canned ones, switched from block cheese to pre-shredded, and used frozen tortillas instead of fresh ones each morning. I showed her Dad's handwritten recipes alongside images documenting menu price increases, shrinking portions, and declining quality over 2 years. Rebecca took detailed notes, asking about suppliers, ingredient costs, preparation times, and when each change occurred, noting whether staff were informed. I shared what I had learned from customers and discreet family members, including how Ethan fired 2 long-standing cooks who had objected to the recipe changes. Her expression grew serious as she glanced up. Ethan had told David the restaurant was stable and profitable, despite a 15% revenue decline over the past year. Rebecca realized Ethan had lied about much more than recipes. She asked me to write a detailed account of the quality changes and their timing, which I did for almost 2 hours. At the end, she thanked me and said she would immediately review operations and finances. I drove home feeling relieved, but anxious that Ethan might discover my involvement. 3 days later, while prepping vegetables at 5 a.m., my phone rang. Sophia's voice was hurried and anxious. Rebecca had arrived at the restaurant the previous afternoon, demanding all financial records from the past 3 years. Ethan protested that an audit required David's presence, but Rebecca reminded him she represented the majority investor and had the legal right to see any records. Sophia explained that Ethan turned pale, made excuses, and tried to delay, while Rebecca calmly waited as he gathered the documents. She had hired an outside accountant to conduct the audit, which began immediately. Sophia seemed anxious, asking if I knew why. I explained that after reporting the recipe changes and quality issues, the restaurant's internal investigation began. Over the next 3 days, Sophia sent updates showing Ethan crumbling under pressure. He yelled at servers for minor mistakes, forgot orders, and mixed up adjustments during lunch rushes. He admitted drinking at work, something Dad never allowed. Staff were tense, and some family members quietly looked for new jobs. Rebecca called on audit day 3, her calm but intense tone more intimidating than yelling. She revealed Ethan had overcharged the restaurant by using a shell company he partially owned, paying himself twice as manager, and inflating supplier bills, all while decreasing food quality. Over $35,000 had been stolen in nearly 2 years. David was returning from his work trip to address this personally, and Rebecca thanked me for bringing these issues to light. That weekend, I was serving lunch at my cart when I noticed a well-dressed man at the end of the line. Not impatient despite the wait, he seemed familiar from Dad's restaurant photos. David had arrived. He ordered a breakfast burrito, 2 empanadas, and a tamale, eating slowly and savoring the food. After finishing, he waited respectfully until I was free to speak. He introduced himself, complimented the food, and explained he wanted to restore Dad's vision for the restaurant. He offered me a business venture, asking if I was interested in helping run the restaurant authentically. I was astonished. Part of me wanted to say yes immediately, but I was protective of my cart. I told him I needed time to consider, emphasizing that the cart was something I built with my own hands and with Jake's help. David understood and left a business card, assuring me he would remove Ethan from management regardless of my decision. The next day, Sophia called with mixed news. Ethan was fired as manager and barred from financial decisions, though he retained minority ownership. She reported that Ethan had a complete meltdown, blaming everyone but himself, and had to be removed by security. David offered Sophia a temporary manager role, which she accepted on the condition that all family workers received fair wages. She apologized for not acting sooner and expressed a desire to repair our relationship. We scheduled a coffee meetup the following week, just the two of us. The following week, life was a mix of routine and uncertainty. I continued running the cart while considering David's offer. Jake noticed I gave a customer incorrect change and asked if I was worried. I explained the restaurant opportunity and the potential impact on our cart. His response surprised me. He valued the cart because it meant spending time together and being outside, and worried that restaurant work would limit our time. His words reminded me that our cart represented more than business. It was independence and family connection. After Jake fell asleep, I devised a strategy. I called David the next morning and proposed consulting on recipes and procedures to improve the restaurant while continuing to run my cart independently. We agreed that the restaurant could focus on sit-down meals with a full menu, while my cart offered quick, affordable breakfast and lunch options. David's consultation fee was reasonable, preserving my independence. The lawyer finalized the contract with minor adjustments the following week. Restaurant training began the next Tuesday. I entered Dad's kitchen for the first time in 2 years, feeling a tight chest. Equipment was familiar, yet upgraded. Sophia greeted me tearfully, and we hugged, apologizing and reconciling. I set out salsa ingredients at 6 o'clock in the morning, and the staff eagerly asked questions. Many admitted frustration over shortcuts and low-quality ingredients imposed by Ethan. I demonstrated Dad's methods for roasting tomatoes and peppers, revealing the depth of flavor lost under Ethan's changes. An older cook wept, claiming it tasted like the old days. After 3 hours of practice, the operation felt promising. Everything ran smoothly for 3 weeks. Then Ethan arrived intoxicated at my cart during dinner rush, shouting that I had stolen his restaurant and manipulated everyone. He became violent, knocking over the condiment station. I calmly told him to leave and sleep it off. Mr. Martinez and 2 customers restrained him, and the police were called. Customers were concerned, but stayed after I apologized and offered complimentary food. Sophia called later, warning that Ethan had begun a drinking program due to his behavior, and I realized how serious his decline had become. The next morning, I filed for a restraining order with the lawyer. I presented documentation of Ethan's harassment, including the parking lot incident and the drunken confrontation at my cart, with Mr. Martinez and other witnesses providing statements. My lawyer assured me the case was strong and that the judge would likely grant a temporary restraining order. 4 days later, I sat in a courthouse waiting room holding the paperwork while a clerk called names. When it was my turn, the judge reviewed the evidence, asked about the incidents and my safety concerns, and issued a temporary restraining order. Ethan was barred from coming within 100 yards of my businesses or contacting me. A hearing was scheduled to determine whether the order would become permanent after 6 months. Since my brother had to go through similar challenges, I left the courthouse carrying the signed paperwork with a mix of relief and sadness. Over the next few weeks, watching the restaurant transform felt like seeing Dad's vision come alive again. David restored relationships with Dad's suppliers, who delivered fresh vegetables daily instead of Ethan's cheap frozen ingredients. He upgraded the kitchen, improved ventilation, and raised wages by $4 per hour. I trained the cooks twice a week, teaching them Dad's mole recipe, which took 2 days of slow cooking and 20 ingredients. The staff regained pride in their work, smiling again, and customers quickly noticed the change. During a breakfast rush, Olivia visited my cart. She took notes on her phone while eating her breakfast burrito and identified herself as a food reviewer for the local neighborhood newspaper, and the daughter of David and Rebecca. She remembered enjoying Dad's food as a child. I welcomed her back anytime. 4 days later, she joined a training session at the restaurant to try more dishes. She ordered Dad's chile rellenos, closed her eyes with the first bite, and seemed to recall something significant. Her review was published the following Wednesday. Jake brought it home, and his instructor made copies for the class. The article praised my cart for providing honest, affordable food while keeping Dad's recipes alive. Olivia highlighted that the restaurant's return to quality ingredients and traditional cooking brought back childhood memories, contrasting the old management that had prioritized profit over quality. Both the cart and the restaurant saw immediate increases in business. Reservations for dinner started at the restaurant while lines grew at my cart. David excitedly called to report their busiest week in 3 years. 2 weeks later, Jake's principal contacted me to arrange a culinary demonstration for a student cultural heritage program. After reading Olivia's article, they suggested I teach children traditional cooking. I agreed and brought Jake along. Using portable burners in the school cafeteria, I demonstrated simple cheese quesadillas to 30 students. Jake helped distribute samples and explained how our grandfather had taught me these techniques. The kids asked about spices, cooking times, and preparing dishes at home, while parents observing from the back approached me afterward. One suggested weekend family cooking lessons. Another said their child wanted to continue learning. I proposed using the commissary kitchen on Sunday afternoons, while it was unoccupied. Monthly cooking classes began the following month. With Jake assisting and teaching kids, we focused on basic traditional dishes families could make at home: empanadas, rice and beans, handmade salsa, and tamales. I shared stories about Dad, how he learned from his mother, woke up at 4 a.m. to prep, and believed good food brought people together. Classes filled quickly with 10 families each, charging $60 per session, covering ingredients and generating profit. The program allowed me to honor Dad while teaching culinary traditions. 4 months later, Rebecca visited my cart during a lunch rush. She showed a financial report demonstrating that the restaurant's revenue had increased by 40% since returning to quality ingredients. Customer numbers were up, average spending had risen, and online reviews improved. She praised my consulting and recipe instruction and shared that David wanted to make the deal permanent by offering me a modest business stake. The following Sunday, I met David and Rebecca at their home. They offered me 12% ownership in exchange for recipe consultation and staff training. I would continue running my cart while having a say in the restaurant's decisions. My restraining order lawyer reviewed the contract and confirmed it was fair, protecting my interests and providing financial security. I signed 2 weeks later, 5 months after the parking lot incident with Ethan. Both businesses were thriving. Mr. Hernandez's nephew operated a second cart using my methods, sharing profits 60-40 to accommodate weekend dinner bookings. The restaurant hired 3 new servers. Sophia and I began meeting for coffee every Wednesday, discussing family, business, and life. She shared details about her boyfriend, a teacher who had attended one of my workshops, and smiled freely for the first time in years. Our conversations no longer carried the anger once associated with Ethan. Some wounds were slow to heal, and some family ties remained broken, but sharing everyday moments with my sister felt like a victory. 2 months later, Ethan's treatment program therapist called. Ethan had completed his program and requested mediation. Though I hesitated, the lawyer advised that it could provide closure and help establish boundaries once the restraining order expired. I arranged to close my cart early and asked Mr. Hernandez's nephew to cover the afternoon shift. The session was held at a modest office near the community college. Ethan arrived, slimmer and wearing simple clothing. The therapist emphasized respectful communication. Ethan admitted that my kitchen skills had intimidated him, acknowledged he had manipulated the will out of fear, and apologized for his past actions, including the parking lot incident and attempts to sabotage my cart. I accepted his apologies, but emphasized that rebuilding trust would take years. The restraining order boundaries remained in effect. Ethan asked to apologize to Jake, which I allowed after ensuring it would not involve business matters. His acknowledgement of the impact on my son felt significant. 3 weeks later, David called to propose a next step. He suggested offering Ethan a restricted kitchen role under the head chef's supervision if he remained sober and completed 5 months of counseling. He would have no managerial, financial, or supplier authority, with any violation resulting in permanent removal. Ethan accepted the terms, demonstrating a change in attitude. Jake's 9th birthday was celebrated at the commissary with cooking activities. Ethan sent a handwritten card in the mail, respecting boundaries while acknowledging Jake's efforts in the family business. Rodriguez offered a second location for my cart, prompting me to recruit 2 local teens, Carlos and Maria. I trained them in Dad's recipes and prep routines. Maria moved to the second location, while Carlos worked both, allowing expansion while maintaining quality. 4 months post-mediation, the local business organization named the restaurant Best Family Eating. I attended the event as a partner, accepting the award with Sophia and David, honoring Dad's culinary legacy. 2 weeks later, a food wholesaler approached me about bottling Dad's salsa. I maintained control over quality and formula, negotiating a 12% royalty on wholesale earnings. The first batch sold out in all local stores. Expanding to multiple zip codes within weeks. Seeing Dad's salsa on shelves while sharing this experience with Jake brought immense satisfaction. Sophia was appointed general manager, gaining authority over hiring, scheduling, and menu decisions. She implemented fair scheduling, raised employee wages, and created weekly feedback meetings. The staff regained confidence and purpose under her guidance. 1 year after the parking lot incident, I returned to my lunch cart to find a long line of loyal customers. Construction workers, school instructors, nurses, office employees, and neighbors. Jake managed orders precisely, remembering preferences. Cooking Dad's meals with care, I honored his legacy while building my own path. Life wasn't perfect. Some relationships were irreparably damaged, and Ethan and I would never be close. But standing at the cart with my son and a line of people waiting for homemade food felt more than enough.